The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Thick clouds choked the sky above Ronki Maximum Security Prison, a cold, gray beast of concrete and steel tucked deep in western Poland. Inside, nothing moved without permission, and no one entered without a reason. That morning, someone did. A black prison van rolled through the main gate, its tires splashing through puddles, escorted by 2 armored SUVs. Guards watched from towers, rifles ready. Inside the van, handcuffed, hooded, and silent, sat a man the transfer documents listed simply as Rilko Damien. No aliases, no gang affiliation, no next of kin, just a sealed court order. Level 5 containment, unrestricted discretion authorized. The warden himself, Pyotr Nowak, stood by the entrance, coat drenched, cigarette trembling slightly between his fingers. "Another ghost," he muttered. The van stopped. The back doors opened with a metallic groan. Out stepped 2 guards, faces pale, followed by the man in question, Damien Rilko. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and arms corded with lean muscle. No tattoos, no scars, just a sharp jawline and a pair of eyes so still they looked like they didn't belong in a human skull. He walked like a man who had nothing to fear, nothing to prove, and nothing left to lose. Nowak glanced at the intake form again. Convicted of triple homicide, it read. No context, no details, just a note scribbled in the margin. Extreme caution. Trained. Avoid confrontation. Inside the processing room, Officer Brzezinski tried to follow standard intake procedure. Strip, turn around, squat. Damien complied. No emotion, no resistance, just silence, the kind that made the guard's skin crawl. Later, in the warden's office, 2 senior officers argued. "You want to put him in Block D?" asked Major Kowalczyk. "That's suicide. For him, or for the rest of them." Nowak exhaled smoke. "He's not special. Just another psycho. Block D is full of them. Let them handle it." Kowalczyk wasn't convinced. Block D is a powder keg. Murderers, rapists, enforcers. That's the worst unit we've got. "Exactly," Nowak said, tapping the ashtray. "Let the monsters eat each other." Block D, cell 14, the iron door slammed behind Damien. The cell was narrow, damp, and stank of sweat and bleach. Inside were 3 other inmates. Yarek, the butcher, Rona, built like a bull, his teeth stained yellow from years of tobacco and violence. Milo Needles Bartosz, a wiry addict with shaky hands and a permanent twitch. Roman Little Romek Zielinski, small, quiet, but known for slicing a man's throat with a toothbrush sharpened to a needlepoint. They looked up when Damien entered. Yarek smirked immediately. "Fresh meat," he growled. "We like that." Milo giggled. "No ink. Must be clean." Romek didn't speak. He just watched, sharp, measuring. Damien said nothing. He dropped his rolled mattress in the corner, sat down on the lower bunk, and stared at the wall. The silence stretched. The air in the cell changed. Something about the new guy didn't feel right. Yarek decided to test him. "You got a name, friend?" No answer. Yarek walked closer, cracking his knuckles. I said, "You got a name?" Damien looked up slowly. His eyes locked onto Jarek's, not with anger, but with something colder. Something. Still, Yarek hesitated. Just a flicker. Then he laughed and turned to Milo. "He thinks he's tough. We'll teach him tonight." That night, the lights dimmed. Guards rotated. The usual noises echoed through the block. Distant coughs, metal clanging, someone yelling in their sleep. In cell 14, 3 men sat awake, waiting. And Damien? Damien simply lay on his bunk, eyes open, breathing slow. At 2:43 a.m., the first move came. Yarek lunged from his bed, tried to catch Damien off guard. Milo followed, wielding a sock filled with soap. Romek stood by the door, look out. It lasted 18 seconds. The next sound were not of punches, but of bodies hitting steel and tile. A scream, a cough, a bone cracking. Then, nothing. Complete silence. The night shift guard, Officer Jedrika, stared at the cell monitor. The camera had glitched, Static for half a minute. When it came back, 3 men were on the ground, one moaning, one unconscious, one clutching a broken wrist. And Damien? Damien was sitting on his bed again, flipping through a torn Bible someone had left behind. 6:02 a.m. the door of cell 14 opened with a long creak. 4 guards entered cautiously, batons ready. "Rona?" one of them called. No answer, just groans. Yerrick lay face down, blood pooling under his jaw. Milo's right arm bent the wrong way. Romek was curled up in the corner, whispering prayers in Latin. And Damien? He stood up slowly, handed the Bible to the guard, and said quietly, "Page 17 is missing." The guards didn't say a word. In the control room, Warden Nowak watched the footage over and over. Each time, his face grew paler. "He didn't even flinch," he whispered. Beside him, Major Kowalczyk crossed himself. "You didn't put a man in Block D," he said grimly. "You put a storm in a cage." The news spread fast. By breakfast, all of Block D was buzzing with something it hadn't felt in years. Uncertainty. In a place where strength was everything and reputation walked ahead of you like a shadow, what happened in Cell 14 was more than just a beating. It was a shift in power. The kind no one understood yet, but everyone feared. Yerrick the butcher was being kept in the infirmary. His jaw had been wired shut. Milo had lost the use of 2 fingers. Romek hadn't spoken since the attack. He just stared at the wall, muttering fragments of prayer, refusing food. And the man responsible? Damien Rilko walked into the prison yard that morning alone. No protection. No backup. Just him, in a gray uniform, eyes scanning the yard like a wolf stepping into a den of snakes. Except the snakes. Coiled back, a few groups watched from a distance. The Russians by the fence. The Albanians near the weights. Even the Poles from Wing B, known for their brutal code, kept their distance. Only one man approached him. Aleksy Kosakru, 6 years in. 6 bodies under his name, at least the ones they found. A leader among the Polish crew, covered in ink from neck to fingertips. He gutted a man over a pack of cigarettes 2 months ago and didn't even blink when the guards cleaned up. Kosa stood tall, grinning, his teeth filed sharp, a trademark of his crew. "You did something last night," he said, stopping 2 meters in front of Damien. Damien didn't respond, just stared. Kosa chuckled. "I like that. Makes people nervous. But me? I want to know what you are." Still no response. Kosa took a step closer. "You come in here like a ghost. 3 of the craziest bastards we got go down, and you don't even have a scratch. No ink, no flag, no crew. So, what's your game, huh?" Damien finally spoke. "No game." Kosa narrowed his eyes. "Then why are you here?" Damien's answer came so soft it was almost a whisper. "They sent me where they thought I wouldn't come back from." And they were wrong? Damien looked up at the cloudy sky, then back at Kosa. I don't care if they were. The moment hung in the air. One of those rare seconds in prison where something larger than violence takes shape, respect, maybe, or fear. Kosa nodded slowly, then smirked. "You're not afraid to die?" "I've already buried who I was." Kosa raised both hands in surrender and backed away. "All right, Ghost," he said, turning. "Let's see if hell fears the dead." Inside the control room, Warden Nowak watched the yard through grainy monitors. Next to him, Officer Brzezinski sipped burnt coffee. "You saw what Kosa did?" Brzezinski muttered. He backed off. "I saw," Nowak replied, eyes fixed on Damien's figure. "You think Rilko was special forces or something?" "More than that." Brzezinski raised an eyebrow. "More." Nowak leaned forward, speaking softly. "You remember Gdansk? 3 years ago? The warehouse fire. 17 dead. The cartel hit that turned into a bloodbath? No survivors, they said." Brzezinski nodded slowly. "Check the arrest records from the docks that night." Nowak whispered. There was one survivor. One man. No record after the trial. Name sealed by court order. "You think it's him?" "I know it is." Back in Block D, the day passed without incident. No fights. No shouting. A strange stillness settled over the cell block. At night, Damien lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Romek, now returned to the cell but changed, quieter, paler, watched him like one watches a snake behind glass. "I heard what you said," Romek whispered from his bed. Damien didn't move. "You said you buried who you were." Still silence. Romek continued, voice shaking. "What? What were you?" After a pause, Damien whispered back, "Someone who thought control was enough." Romek frowned. "Enough for what?" Damien turned slightly, just enough for his eyes to be seen in the dark, to stop them from taking what mattered. Romek fell silent. Somewhere in the distance, a guard's radio crackled. The next test, the prison worked like an ecosystem. When something new entered, the old predators always tested it. By the third night, a test came again, not for within the cell, but outside. 3 inmates from Wing C, brought in under escort, snuck into Block D during a routine work shift. Paid off a guard. The job was clear. Break the ghost. Prove he bleeds. They waited in the hallway until lights out. At 1:12 a.m., they struck. Damien's cell was opened manually. The sound woke Romek, who immediately curled into the far corner, eyes wide with terror. The 3 attackers entered with blades fashioned from toothbrushes and metal scraps. They didn't last 5 seconds. One was thrown through the cell bars with such force his shoulder dislocated on impact. Another had his wrist snapped and was knocked unconscious with his own weapon. The third begged. Romek didn't see everything. He couldn't. His eyes were shut, hands over his ears, whispering Ave Maria like a child in a storm. But when the guards finally arrived, it was clear no one touched Damien. No one even got close. And the stretchers came again. Later that night, Major Kowalczyk reviewed the security footage in his office. His jaw clenched. This is getting out of hand. Nowak didn't look up from his desk. We've got him contained. For now. But what happens when the whole prison realizes he's the alpha? The power vacuum? The alliance is shifting. Nowak finally looked up, his eyes cold. Let them shift. Kowalczyk stepped closer. You're playing with something we don't understand. Nowak lit a cigarette and leaned back. No, I understand perfectly. He blew smoke toward the ceiling. I'm not afraid of him, he said, but I think everyone else should be. By the 4th morning, Damien Rilko had officially become a problem, not just for the inmates, but for the entire system. Guards walked past his cell faster. No one called him for work duty. Even in the canteen, a place where staring too long at the wrong man could get you stabbed. Inmates avoided eye contact with him altogether. It wasn't respect. It was fear. Prisoners who once ruled their corners of the yard now whispered in huddles, eyes flicking toward him every few seconds. Men with long histories of violence, men who had carved reputations into flesh and bone, lowered their heads when Damien passed. But Damien? He said nothing. He watched, he waited, and he wrote. In the evenings, after lights out, while others tried to sleep or sharpen blades in the dark, Damien sat on his bunk with a stub of pencil and a crumpled sheet of paper. A list. Each night, he added a name, sometimes just a last name, sometimes just a nickname. But each one was written slowly, with precise movements, like a ritual. Romek, who shared the cell with him, had begun counting. By the 3rd night, there were 12 names. 12 names, and every one of them connected. Guards, inmates, and people outside. Romek couldn't take it anymore. One night, he sat up in his bed, staring at Damien across the dark cell. "What's the list for?" he asked, trying to keep his voice even. Damien didn't look up. He just wrote another name, carefully. "I need to remember," he said softly. "Remember what?" Who watched and did nothing? Who helped? Who laughed? Romek swallowed hard. He wanted to ask more, but something in Damien's eyes told him not to. Meanwhile, in the warden's office, Warden Nowak sat in a tense meeting with the prison's chief intelligence officer, Major Kowalczyk. "You think he's targeting someone?" the major said. "I don't think. I know." Kowalczyk leaned over the desk. "You've seen this kind before?" Nowak lit another cigarette, staring at the security monitor. Damien was sitting still in his cell, hands folded, list folded in half next to him. I've seen killers, psychopaths, even ex-special forces who couldn't turn it off. But this, he nodded toward the screen, this is different. Kowalczyk raised an eyebrow. How? Nowak blew smoke through his nose. He doesn't act from instinct. He's not defending himself. He's doing math. Each move is calculated, efficient, surgical. So what's the motive? Nowak turned to look the Major in the eyes. He's building toward something. The first warning 2 days later, an incident rattled the entire compound. Guard Paul Lelek, a man known for his brutality, was found unconscious in the staff locker room. Face beaten, ribs broken, a plastic bag zip-tied around his wrists. Next to him was a small note written in pencil, "For what you did to her." The prison went into full lockdown. Warden Nowak reviewed camera footage. There was nothing, no trace of Damien leaving his cell. No gap in time, no door opened. It was impossible. And yet, the handwriting on the note matched the writing found in Damien's bunk from the list. Kowalczyk shook his head. This is turning into a vendetta. Nowak didn't answer. He was too busy staring at a blurry frame on the monitor. It showed Damien lying still on his bunk at the exact moment Lelek was attacked. Either we're dealing with a ghost, he muttered, or someone's helping him. Inside, the yard of prison yard was on edge. Everyone knew something was happening. The beating of guard Lelek was like throwing blood into a shark tank. Some inmates thought it was a message from a new gang. Others whispered about something worse, an inside man working for someone outside the walls. But there were a few who began piecing the truth together. One of them was Kosa. Watching Damien move across the yard like a man on a mission, Kosa began asking questions. Quietly, carefully, he bribed a kitchen worker for info, pressured an old contact in the laundry room, and the pieces started falling into place. Kosa walked over to Damien one afternoon while he was sitting alone near the concrete bench. "You lost someone, didn't you?" Kosa said, voice low. Damien didn't answer, but his eyes shifted. Kosa sat beside him, not just a brother or a crew member. Something deeper. A daughter, maybe. A sister. Something personal. Damien's jaw tightened. "They took her," he said. Kosa nodded slowly. "And you're here. Not because you got caught. You wanted to be sent here." Damien finally looked at him. "They're all here," he said. "Every last one of them." Kosa sat in silence for a few seconds, then stood. "You've got a list. I won't ask how long it is." He hesitated before walking away. "But if my name ever ends up on it," he said, turning back, "give me the chance to explain myself." Damien gave a slow nod. And just like that, for the first time, he wasn't alone. The missing guard that night, another guard didn't show up for work. Officer Zebek, known for his ties to contraband smuggling inside the prison, had simply vanished. His car was still in the parking lot. His radio was found under the desk in the east corridor, but there was no trace of him. No blood, no noise, nothing. The prison entered silent panic. But no public announcement was made. The staff feared what would happen if the inmates found out a second guard had disappeared. Meanwhile, in cell 14, Damien folded another sheet of paper. The list now had 16 names. Romek watched from his bunk, sweating under his blanket. He couldn't sleep anymore, not because of fear, but because a small part of him started wondering whether the names on that list deserved what was coming. By the start of the second week, the prison had changed. Not on the surface. Routines were still enforced, doors still locked, meals still served at the same time. But there was an unspoken tension hanging over the cell blocks, like the air itself had thickened. Even the most violent inmates walked softer now. Guards moved in pairs, avoiding eye contact with certain prisoners. And Damien? He continued his routine like nothing had changed. He worked out in the morning, sat still at noon, rode in the evenings, watched, listened, waited. His list had grown to 21 names. But what no one knew was that the list wasn't just names anymore. It was mapped. Next to each name, Damien had drawn lines, connections, timelines, notes. The paper looked more like a battlefield blueprint than a hit list, and every piece on that map was part of his plan. In the surveillance room, Officer Roddick had worked in Block C for 6 years. He knew every camera, every glitch, every blind spot. He also knew that recently, those blind spots were being used. Cameras going dark for a few seconds. Files mysteriously overwritten. Times not matching up with guard logs. He tried to report it. Once, his supervisor told him to let it go. But Roddick didn't let it go. He watched closer, dug deeper, and then he saw it. In a 20-second glitch in the C-Block hallway cam, he noticed something unusual. A man with a hood and gloves walking past the cell doors, moving like he belonged there. The camera flickered, and when it came back, the man was gone. Roddick paused the footage and zoomed in. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered, walking with calm confidence. But it wasn't Damien. The face was hidden, but the walk. It didn't match. Someone was helping him. Someone from the outside on the inside. Romek breaks that night. Romek couldn't hold it in anymore. He sat up in the cell, trembling. "I saw the list," he said, his voice dry. Damien didn't even glance up. He was sharpening a toothbrush handle against the metal bunk frame. "I read some of the names." Romek continued. "There are guards, inmates, even a priest." Damien paused and looked at him. "Then you know why I'm here." Romek's voice cracked. "She was your daughter, wasn't she?" Damien said nothing. Romek wiped sweat from his forehead. "They hurt her in this prison before you were here." Still no reply. Romek stood up, pacing the cell now like a man possessed. "I was in Block D then. I heard stories about a girl, about videos being passed around. They said she was brought in by force. Someone high up arranged it. She didn't survive." Damien's eyes were still, cold. Romek sat down again, breathing heavily. "You came here to kill them all." Damien nodded once. The warning the next day, another message appeared. This time, in the chapel, a small wooden crucifix had been broken in half. Taped to the pulpit was another handwritten note. "You gave them the keys. You prayed while she screamed." The prison priest, Father Merrick, was transferred to solitary under protective custody. But everyone knew what that meant. He was on the list. The inmates grew restless. Some began to panic, demanding transfers. Others offered bribes to be moved to another facility. The prison's balance of power was cracking. Warden Nowak called another emergency meeting. "We have a mole," he said. Major Kowalczyk replied, "We have a war." Kosa returns Kosa hadn't spoken to Damien since their first quiet exchange, but he had been watching closely. He saw how Damien moved. He saw who got hurt and who didn't. And then he saw something strange. One of the most vicious enforcers in Block A, a man called Mariusz Tornado, had gone to intimidate Damien during yard time. 5 minutes later, Mariusz was found locked in the showers, both arms broken. Everyone assumed Damien did it, but Kosa knew otherwise. Damien had never moved from the bench. Kosa approached him again. "You're not doing it alone." Damien looked up, the faintest hint of a smirk on his face. Kosa sat down slowly. "You got someone inside. Someone moving when the cameras go down." "Not someone," Damien said. "Then what?" "A debt." Kosa didn't understand. Not fully, but he felt the weight of those words. The quiet ones started talking in every prison. There are men who never speak. Men whose eyes are always on the floor. Ghosts with broken spines. But in the aftermath of the chapel incident, even the quiet ones started whispering. They spoke of things long buried, about parties arranged by guards, women brought in from the outside, dark games in the laundry rooms and maintenance tunnels. They spoke about her. Young, innocent, promised a favor, ended up broken. Some said she was related to someone powerful outside. Others said she was just a message, to show that no one was safe. But now someone was sending a message back. And it was being understood. The black bag late at night. During another inspection, guards found something in the hallway near Block D. A black gym bag. Inside, a pair of bloody gloves, a guard badge, a phone loaded with videos, a second list, almost identical to Damien's. But this one had 5 names crossed out, and 6 more circled. The prison officially went into lockdown for 72 hours. Every room was searched, every guard interrogated. No results. Because the truth was, the man helping Damien wasn't just anyone. He was someone no one would dare accuse. Not yet. The lockdown dragged into its second day. The walls of Block C seemed tighter. Air hung heavy with suspicion and sweat. Every clang of metal, every footstep, carried a weight it hadn't before. No one was safe anymore. Not the guards. Not the inmates. And certainly not those whose names were on that list. The doctor who knew too much, Dr. Amelia Serwin, had been the prison's medical officer for 6 years. She had seen broken ribs, shanked kidneys, burned palms. But nothing prepared her for the man they rolled into the infirmary on that cold Thursday morning. It was Whittick, a former cell boss in Block B. Massive, tattooed, feared by most. Now, he was whimpering, face shattered, jaw broken in 2 places. Nails pulled, one eye completely gone. Dr. Serwin took one look and almost vomited. But what chilled her wasn't his condition. It was a paper tucked inside his shirt. A folded piece, wet with blood, but still legible. 7 down. 5 to go. Tell the priest he's next. She stared at it, trembling. She wasn't just patching up bodies now. She was standing in the middle of something no one could stop. And she remembered something from 6 months ago, before Damien's transfer. A quiet visit from an outside inspector, asking about unauthorized psychiatric holds. Someone had slipped through her office unnoticed. A girl, young, scared, unregistered, no records, just bruises. She had forgotten about it, but now it came roaring back. The priest Brake's father, Merrick, had once held sermons in the prison chapel with pride. He believed he could save anyone. But after 3 days in protective solitary, something inside him cracked. The cameras recorded him scratching the walls, talking to himself, crying at night. Finally, he requested to speak to the warden. When brought into the interrogation room, his face was pale, and he was shaking. "He told me he'd come," Merrick muttered. "Who?" Warden Nowak asked. "The father, the one we thought was no one." The priest looked up, eyes hollow. She wasn't just some girl. She was his blood. Nowak leaned forward. "Are you saying, Damien? I'm saying we did something that can't be undone. And now hell is inside this prison, and it's wearing his face." He broke down sobbing. A deal is offered. Major Kowalczyk entered Damien's cell that night, flanked by 2 guards. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. Instead, he pulled up a chair and sat. "You're smart," he said calmly. "You knew they'd underestimate you." Damien said nothing. They thought you'd be swallowed. But you're consuming the entire system. Still silence. "So here's what I'm offering. A deal." Kowalczyk placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents, a transfer order, a sealed packet from the Ministry of Justice, a photo of a little girl, Damien's daughter, smiling before everything. "You give me the names of your accomplices. You stop the chaos. And I'll make sure you walk free within a year." Damien reached across the table, closed the folder, and pushed it back. He finally spoke. "I didn't come here to leave." The map Expands Romek had grown thinner. He barely slept. Ate only when Damien made him. And he watched as the map on the wall grew. Now it didn't just list names. It showed shifts, movements, connections between inmate groups and corrupt guards. Arrows pointing from the kitchen staff to the mailroom. Dates, incidents, markers. "What are you planning?" Romek asked one night. Damien turned to him slowly. "They think this place is a prison." He pointed to the map. "But it's a stage." Romek's voice quivered. "For what?" Damien gave him a look that would stay with him forever. For their reckoning. The fire alarm at 3:17 a.m. The fire alarm went off across all blocks. Chaos erupted. Guards ran. Doors were slammed open. Inmates were rushed out into the cold yard. Amid the confusion, a small team of masked men moved through the maintenance corridor behind Block E. They weren't inmates. They weren't on the roster. They move with precision. In silence, they reach cell 2E, home of Slock Chernick, one of the few remaining names on Damien's list. 5 minutes later, Chernick was found in a laundry chute, wrapped in bed sheets. His spine bent the wrong way. He had been tied with rosary beads. The message was clear. Tell the priest he's late. The truth about her in the warden's office. Officer Roddick placed a photo on the desk. A girl, dark hair, blue eyes. Next to it, a still from one of the confiscated videos, the same girl, but bruised and crying. A timestamp in the corner. June 2nd, 6 months ago. It wasn't just any girl. It was Maria Zawadzka, Damien's daughter. She had been lured inside the prison under the pretense of a visit with her boyfriend, a low-level inmate, but the visit never happened. Instead, she was rerouted through an unauthorized access point, held in a back room, used by the inmates and guards on the circle, then discarded. Officially, she died from accidental overdose 2 days later. The body was cremated before Damien was ever notified. No autopsy, no file, no justice. Until now, a name appears on a wall in the yard the next morning. The inmates found something painted in red across the inner wall of Block C. This is not vengeance. This is memory. And beneath that, a final list of names. One more had been added. Warden Nowak. He stared at it in disbelief from his office window. His hand trembled. He finally understood. Damien wasn't bluffing. He was only halfway done. The entire prison had become a living organism, one with fevered breath, racing heart, and terrified nerves. The guards walked lighter. The inmates whisper more. And everywhere, people were watching their backs, afraid of what might come next. But Damien? He didn't whisper. He didn't watch his back. He waited, and the lock was about to break. The warden's last gamble warden, Nowak, had changed. Gone was the upright, cold-eyed bureaucrat. In his place was a man who barely slept, who flinched at every sound. The name on the wall haunted him. His photo was circulating among the inmates. He knew what that meant. So he made a call, not to the ministry, not to internal security. He called a man who only answered with "You're late." A deal was made, fast and bloody. At 3 a.m., a private team of 6 men entered through the service tunnel. Ex-military, off books, paid in cash. Their orders neutralized Damien Zawadzki. The storm in Block C's lights went out at 3:42 a.m. The hum of electricity faded. Cameras blinked. Doors jammed. Then the fire alarm was triggered. Again, but this time no one ran. No one moved. The inmates had seen this before. They knew what was coming. And in cell 15C, Damien sat on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Romek clutched a sharpened toothbrush in one hand, shaking. "You said no one would reach us," he whispered. "They won't," Damien replied without opening his eyes. "But they'll try." The killers entered. The 6 black-clad mercenaries moved in silence, helmets on, visors dark. No names, no hesitation. They swept through the block like shadows, clearing cells. 2 inmates were put down fast. Wrong place, wrong time. Blood on concrete. Screams cut off halfway. They reached cell 15C. 3 of them breached. 2 secured the hallway. 1 stayed back. Inside the cell it was quiet. Romek stood near the wall, hands trembling. Damien stood still, his back turned. The first merc moved toward him. 2 steps. Then another. Then the ceiling exploded. A pipe burst. Steam flooded the room. A flare rolled on the bunk, blinding, searing red. Romek dropped to the floor just as the merc's legs were kicked out by something fast, too fast. Damien was already in motion, elbow to throat, stab to kidney. 1 merc went down gurgling. The second turned too slow, a shank to the eye. The third managed a shot. Romek screamed, but it hit the wall. And then silence, just a hiss of steam and the low gurgle of blood. The confession broadcast at 4:15 a.m. Every monitor in the control room flickered. A pre-recorded video played. Damien sat in a chair, wearing a prison uniform. The background, the chapel, A black cloth covered the altar. He stared directly into the lens. My name is Damian Zawadzki. Identification 21276C. A pause. My daughter, Maria, was brought into this facility on June 2nd under false pretenses. She was assaulted by men inside these walls, some inmates, some in uniform. She died 2 days later. They told me it was drugs. They burned her body. No file, no face, just silence. His voice cracked slightly. I came here because silence is injustice, because no one else would speak, because the system buried her. He leaned forward. I didn't start a war. I started a reckoning. Behind him, the black cloth fell. Dozens of photos were pinned to the wall. Faces of men, guards, administrators, external contractors, all labeled. Dates, details. This is not revenge. This is proof. The final exit, the mercenaries didn't report back. The guards locked down Block C, but no resistance came. Instead, they found a door open in the west maintenance shaft, a trail of blood, 3 empty cells, and a note pinned to the wall. For Maria, Warden Nowak never made a home. His car was found burning outside the prison wall. No body. Some say he fled. Others say Damian left him for last. But no one ever saw Nowak again. Aftermath, the fallout was immediate. The ministry denied everything. But the videos spread like wildfire. Within hours, major outlets were broadcasting it. Human rights groups demanded investigations. Families of other missing inmates came forward. Protests, audits, resignations. And in the shadows, a name rose. Not shouted, not posted, just whispered. Zawadzki, not as a prisoner, as a legend, a warning, a reminder that even the worst walls can't contain grief when it turns afire. Romex letter years later, a journalist received an envelope, no return address. Inside a single page, he didn't want revenge, he wanted memory. He gave them pain so they'd never forget hers. I was there. I saw it. His daughter was only 16. R.